Hello students, today we are moving on to the second part of lesson number 2, India, Structure and Physiography. Before we move on further, let's try to recall what all we did in the first part of the chapter. We discussed that India has variation in landforms according to geology. The Himalayas and the northern plains are the most recent landforms. From the point of view of geology, Himalayan mountains form an unstable zone. That means they are more vulnerable to, more prone to landslides and earthquakes. The whole mountain system of Himalayas, they are known as young fold mountains. They represent a very youthful topography. That means they have high peaks, deep valleys and fast flowing rivers. Whereas the northern plains, they are made up of alluvial deposits. The alluvium brought by the interplay of three major river systems, Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra. The peninsular plateau, the most stable zone, is composed of igneous and metamorphic rocks. And this plateau region has gently rising hills and wide valleys. Now we'll move on to the first subdivision of the physical variations in India, that is the Himalayas. The Himalayas, they are geologically young fold mountains. As I've told you, they form the northern borders of India. The mountain ranges, they run in a west-east direction from the Indus to the Brahmaputra. The Himalayas represent the loftiest and one of the most rugged mountain barriers of the world. They form an arc which covers a distance of about 2,500 kilometers. The width, it varies from 400 kilometers in Kashmir, that is the western part, and 160 kilometers in Arunachal Pradesh, which is the eastern part. The altitudinal variations, the relief, the height, it is greater in the eastern half of those than the western half. The Himalayas, they stand like a strong and long wall between the Indian subcontinent and the Central and East Asian countries. Himalayas, they are not only physical barrier, that means they are also climatic barrier, drainage barrier and cultural divide. They save us from the cold Siberian winds coming from the north. They also are responsible for the origin of many rivers. Many rivers, either they originate from Himalayas or they take a turn. Hence, Himalayas are an important water divide. And of course, not to forget, Himalayas are the cultural divide too. These Himalayas can be studied in various ways. So, today I'll be telling you different ways to know more about Himalayas. Children, you must have done in your previous classes that the Himalayas can be studied in three parallel ranges. The three parallel ranges of Himalayas are Himadri, Himachal and Shivalik. Let's try to know more about these three parallel ranges, which is of course very interesting. Himadri. Himadri is the northernmost range, which is also known as Great or the Inner Himalayas. It is the most continuous range consisting of very high peaks with an average height of 6,000 meters. It contains all the prominent peaks. Let me tell you which are the prominent peaks. Yes, you are right. Mount Everest, Kanchenjunga, Dhaulagiri, Nanda Devi, Nanga Parvat, Namcha Barwa and many more. That was the first topmost parallel range of Himalayas. Below Himadri, we have the second parallel range which is named as Himachal. The range lying to the south of Himadri forms the most rugged mountain systems, also known as Lesser Himalayas. This range is composed of highly compressed and altered rocks. The altitude varies between 3,700 meters to 4,500 meters and the average width is almost 50 kilometers. This range has many more prominent ranges. The most prominent range is Pir Panjal range, which is the longest and the most important. The other two important and prominent ranges are Dhauladhar and Mahabharat range. This range consists of famous valleys, especially the valley of Kashmir, the Kangra, the Kulu valley, which are in Himachal Pradesh. This region is also famous for hill stations. Try to name certain hill stations. Yes, Kashmir, Nainital, Dalhousie, Darjeeling, Manali, etc. The lowermost or the outermost range, which is the third parallel range of Himalayas, is known as Shivaliks. It extends over a width of 10 to 50 kilometers and has an altitude almost varying between 900 meters to 1100 meters. These ranges are composed of unconsolidated sediments brought down by the rivers from the main Himalayan ranges. So, this range is covered with thick gravel and alluvium. The longitudinal valley, which is between the Lesser Himalayas, children remember Lesser Himalayas are the Himachal, and the Shivaliks are known as Duns. Dehradun, Kotli Dun, Patli Dun, these are some of the well-known duns of this region. Now that was one way of studying about the Himalayas. Now we know that there are large scale variations, regional variations within the Himalayas on the basis of relief, alignment of ranges and other geomorphological features. The Himalayas can be divided into various subdivisions. The major subdivisions are the Kashmir and Northwestern Himalayas, the Himachal and Uttaranchal Himalayas, the Darjeeling and Sikkim Himalayas, Arunachal Himalayas and Eastern Hills and Mountains. Children will be studying about all these subdivisions one by one, and all these subdivisions are very interesting to know about. The first subdivision that we will be knowing more about is the Kashmir and the Northwestern Himalayas. This region, it comprises of a series of ranges such as Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar and Pir Panjal. The northeastern part of this part of Himalayas is a cold desert which lies between the Greater Himalayas and the Karakoram range. Between the Greater Himalayas and the Pir Panjal range lies the world famous valley of Kashmir. The important glaciers of South Asia such as Baltoro and Siachen are also found in this region. Children, I hope you know these glaciers, Baltoro and Siachen glacier. Certain important passes of this region are Jojila, which is in the Greater Himalayas, Banihal, which is on the Pir Panjal range, Photula, which is on the Zaskar range, and Khardungla, which is on the Ladakh range. This region also has certain freshwater lakes. You must have heard of Dal Lake, which is in Kashmir, and Vular Lake. This region also has certain famous saltwater lakes such as Pangong So and So Moriri. There are many rivers and other places of attraction also. Now I will be telling you more about it. This region is drained by river Indus and its tributaries, and the major tributaries are river Jhelum and river Chenab. The Kashmir and Northwestern Himalayas, for which we are talking about, they are well known for their scenic beauty and picturesque landscape. The landscape of Himalayas are the major source of attraction for the tourists, and it's also famous for the adventure tourism. The famous places of pilgrimage are also located here like Vaishno Devi, Amarnath Cave, Charari Sharif. The Kashmir Valley is also famous for Kareva formations. What are Karevas? They are the intermountain valley fill comprising of unconsolidated gravel, glacial clay and mud. These are terrace-like features which are very useful for the cultivation of saffron, which is a local variety of saffron. So, this was the first subdivision of Himalayas, that is the Kashmir Himalayas. Now we move on to the second subdivision of Himalayas, that is the Himachal and Uttaranchal Himalayas. This part, Himachal and Uttaranchal Himalayas, lies approximately between the Ravi in the west and the Kali in the east. Remember children, Kali is a tributary of river Ghagra. It is drained by two major river systems of India, the Indus and the Ganga. Tributaries of river Indus include river Ravi, river Beas and river Satluj, and the tributaries of river Ganga flowing through this region include the Yamuna and the Ghagra. The northernmost part of Himachal Himalayas is an extension of the Ladakh cold desert, which lies in the Spiti subdivision of district Lahul and Spiti. This particular range has many hill stations, especially this three ranges. You remember three ranges? Himadri, Himachal and Shivalik. Greater Himalayas, Lesser Himalayas and Outer Himalayas. These names will come again and again. So children, try to learn these names. The three ranges of Himalayas, namely the Great Himalayan Range, the Lesser Himalayan Range, which is locally known as Dhauladhar in Himachal Pradesh, and Nagtiba in Uttaranchal, and the Shivalik range from the north to the south are very prominent in this section. In this section of Lesser Himalayas, the altitude between 1000 and 2000 meters specially attracted the Britishers during the colonial period. This region has many favorable factors. So the British colonial administration, they formed certain important hill stations here like Dharamshala, Mussoorie, Shimla, Kasauli, and they also formed certain cantonment towns and health resorts such as Shimla, Mussoorie, Kasauli, Almora, Lansdowne and Ranikhet. These are all developed initially by the Britishers. Here, duns are very famous. Remember what are duns? Duns are the longitudinal valleys between the Lesser Himalayas and Shivalik. The two distinguishing features of this region from the point of view of physiography are the Shivalik and the Dun formation. Some important duns are Chandigarh Kalka Dun, Nalagarh Dun, Dehradun, Harike Dun and Kota Dun. Dehradun is the largest of all the duns with an approximate length of 35 to 45 kilometers. Have you heard of Valley of Flowers? Of course, you must have heard of it. Famous Valley of Flowers is also situated in this region. The National Park of Valley of Flowers is known for its meadows of endemic alpine flowers and outstanding natural beauty. This richly diverse area is also home of rare and endangered animals. The places of pilgrimage such as Gangotri, Yamunotri, Kedarnath, Badrinath and Hemkund Sahib are also situated in this part. There are certain famous nomadic groups also located here. In the Greater Himalayan region, the valleys are mostly inhabited by the Bhotias. These are the nomadic groups who migrate to Bugyals, the summer grasslands in the higher reaches during summer months and return to the valleys during the winter months. Bugyals are also named as the alpine pasture lands in the higher elevations of Himalayas. So this was the second subdivision of Himalayas. Children, let us move on to the third subdivision according to the physiography that we are discussing. The third subdivision is the Darjeeling and the Sikkim Himalayas. I hope you have heard of these hill stations. These are flanked by Nepal Himalayas in the west and Bhutan Himalayas in the east. It is relatively small but the most significant part of Himalayas. It is well known for its fast flowing river which is Teesta, and it is a region of high mountain peak like Kanchenjunga and deep valleys. Sikkim and Darjeeling Himalayas are also known for their scenic beauty and rich flora and fauna, particularly various types of orchids. This region is also famous for tea gardens. As compared to the other section of Himalayas, these, along with the Arunachal Himalayas, are conspicuous because of the absence of Shivalik formations. In place of Shivaliks here, the Dwar formation are important, which also have been used for the development of tea gardens. The Britishers, especially in that particular region, they developed tea gardens, taking the advantage of the physical conditions such as moderate slope, thick soil cover with high organic content, well distributed rainfall throughout the year and mild winters. So, tea gardens were introduced for their favorism. This region is also inhabited by certain tribal community. The higher reaches of this region are inhabited by Lepcha tribes, while the southern part, particularly the Darjeeling Himalayas, has a mixed population of Nepalis, Bengalis and tribals from the central India. Now, the next subdivision of Himalayas, that is the Arunachal Himalayas. Arunachal Himalayas extend from the east of the Bhutan Himalayas up to the Diffu Pass in the east. The general direction of this mountain range is from southwest to northeast. Some of the important mountain peaks of this region are Kangtu and Namcha Barwa. These ranges are dissected by fast-flowing rivers from the north to the south, forming deep gorges, deep eye-shaped valleys. Brahmaputra flows through a deep gorge after crossing Namcha Barwa. Certain other important rivers of this particular region, that is the Arunachal Himalayas, are the Kameng, the Subansiri, the Dihang, the Dibang and the Lohit. These are perennial rivers with high rate of fall. So, these rivers have highest hydroelectric power potential in the country. This region is again inhabited by indigenous communities. An important aspect of the Arunachal Himalayas is the numerous ethnic tribal community. Some of the important prominent tribal communities from west to east are the Monpa, Dafla, Abor, Mishmi, Nishi and the Nagas. Most of these communities practice jhumming. It is also known as shifting agriculture or slash and burn cultivation. This region is very rich in biodiversity, which has been preserved by these indigenous communities, which is very commendable. Now we move on to the last part of the subdivisions of Himalayas, that is the eastern hills and mountains. The eastern hills and mountains are the part of Himalayan mountain system having their general alignment from north to the south direction. They are known by different local names. In the north, they are known as Patkaibum, Naga Hills, Manipur Hills, and in the south, they are known as Mizo or Lushai Hills. Most of these ranges are separated by each other by numerous small rivers. The physiography of Manipur is very unique by the presence of a large lake known as Loktak. It is in the center, surrounded by mountains from all the sides. It's a very beautiful place to visit. The rivers of eastern Himalayas, let's talk about them. Barak is an important river in Manipur and Mizoram. Most of the rivers in Nagaland, they form the tributary of river Brahmaputra. Two rivers of Mizoram and Manipur are the tributaries of Barak river, which in turn is a tributary of river Meghna. The rivers in the eastern part of Manipur are the tributaries of Chindwin, which in turn is a tributary of Irrawaddy, which is a river in Myanmar. Mizoram, which is also known as the Molasses Basin, which is made up of unconsolidated soft river sediments. This molasses, with its mountainous topography, contains many foreland basins, which is a valley type depression running parallel to the mountain ranges. So, this is the last subdivision of Himalayas. Children, what all we have done today? We have done the major subdivision of Himalayas according to the altitude, according to the variations, according to the different topography. So, do not forget that Himalayas can be studied on the basis of parallel ranges and of course according to the relief, alignment of ranges and other geomorphological features. You must go through the NCERT book to know more about all these subdivisions of Himalayas. In the next part of this chapter, we will be studying about the northern plains. Thank you children. See you again in the next lecture.